Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the stream, or good morning, depending where you are and when you're watching this. Welcome to the stream. It's great to have you here with me, with us in the chat. I've noticed that a lot of my views come after the stream, so I don't know if that's common, if that's not common, but whenever you're watching this, if you're watching on catch-up or you're watching live, welcome and thank you for deciding to spend some time with me. I really appreciate it. It's great to have you here. Today, as you will hopefully have been able to guess from the title of the stream, I'm going to be looking at Scotia Grendel. Thursdays are always my look at some of the smaller miniature creators who are out there, at some of the different stuff that they're doing, and this time round it is Scotia Grendel. As ever, I've got some painted examples, some unpainted examples, and also I'm going to be doing some painting of one of their pieces on the stream as well. Feel free to jump in with any questions, any comments, anything like that. It's great to have the interaction, and I'd love for you to get involved in what's going on. I think, I should just say before we go any further, I am not sponsored by Scotia Grendel. I don't have any financial associations with them at all. This is purely me attempting to put a kind of spotlight on some of the creators that I have bought from and used and things like that. So this isn't an advert, it's not paid for in any way, shape or form. So hopefully you can trust my honest opinion of everything that you see, but hopefully as well this gives you the chance to form your own opinion of some of their miniatures. As I say, I do have some painted and some unpainted, so let's start by taking a look at some of the painted miniatures. Now, what I'm discovering when doing these streams, particularly the small creator stream, is I am apparently I'm apparently all over the terrain from anywhere that sells it. I seem to buy and paint more terrain than pretty much any other miniature painter that I've seen because I love the stuff. Scotia Grendel do terrain, and I'm going to show you a fair amount of that, but they also do kind of actual character minis and things like that as well. So I'll show you some of each. In fact, why not? We'll show you two alongside each other. So we'll start off with these two pieces. As I say, I've got plenty to show you, but I won't show them all right now. We'll get on with some painting in a minute, and then while layers are drying and things, we can have a look at some of the others. So this is a bridge. It is, as you can see, it's got the kind of magical symbols and things on there, and it's got a little bit of moss or that kind of thing. It's got some skulls. Yes, chat suggested that might be a wind rune. It does look like that, certainly. I don't know. I like the idea that maybe one of these is a trap and one is not, or something, for a D&D campaign, something along those lines. I love them in there, and you could definitely leave them just as stone, and they would kind of look a bit more just like a normal carved bridge that maybe has these things in them. But I like being able to pick that out. I think maybe when I was painting it, I went for this color because I was thinking maybe water, saying a prayer to the water that you're traveling over or something along those lines, which is why I went for a kind of blue rune. But that's one. And one of the things that's great about Scotia Grendel is that they are very, I almost don't want to say the word cheap, because in this kind of, I don't know, in this society, cheap has very negative connotations. As a Scotsman, I can't possibly understand why that would be the case. But this bridge is, I think it's £8 from Scotia Grendel, obviously unpainted and everything. So it really is very reasonable. I think one of the things that I like about Scotia Grendel is in a world where you can buy miniatures for £30 or £40 for a miniature, and those are amazing quality. I'm not trying to have a go at either end of the spectrum, but you can still buy miniatures which are reasonable, and you can have a game with. These I think are really nicely sculpted, really beautiful miniatures. So this is a bridge. You can see there that's sculpted, but I've just put it as black so that it kind of gives an impression of hollowness there. And here is an actual miniature from them, if it will ever focus nicely. you can see there, I've given him a bit of a crazy look on his face. The actual miniatures from Scotia Grendel have a really nice, like old school quality about them. I don't really know how to describe it. It's a difficult one to describe. But a lot of the modern miniatures are very heavily sculpted, and yeah, I guess the aesthetic has just changed really, and maybe that's partly because this is metal. Maybe it's a move from the metal towards some of the more plastic, resin-based minis, that kind of thing. But this, yeah, it does have a very old school look, at least to me. And I'll show you some of the other unpainted minis that I'm going to be getting on with as well. So I'm going to be painting an orc, or well, I'm going to be starting painting an orc today. Who's here? I'll put him in my little miniature holder. Again, if it focuses, and again, I don't know if you can see what I mean, but it definitely has an older school feel to it to me. If you're around on Saturday morning, I'm actually going to be looking at some of the really old Warhammer miniatures. So I've got some really old orc miniatures which I'll be showing there. Let's see. I think yes, I've got a new orc miniature from Games Workshop here, and yeah, I think obviously one's painted and one's unpainted, so it's a little bit difficult. But I think. Yeah, that's a really good shout actually. Twitch chat has just said it's more about maybe about the proportions. So everything is very exaggerated on the modern miniatures, whereas the older ones, it's an odd thing to say realistic when you're talking about orcs, but yes, are a bit more understated perhaps in those ways. So we'll get rid of the new one. Since I'm doing a small stream, I should probably keep Warhammer stuff to a minimum. But this is the guy that I'm going to be working on today. I'll show you a couple of the... so obviously I've kind of primed him and whatever. But this is how they come. And you can see, it's their white metal miniatures. And they do have a lot of the like excess material on. It's very easy to take excess material. There you go. I've just taken some of the metal there. So it's not a problem at all. But it does require just a little bit of work to get it to that state. But yeah, as I say, it's nothing too major at all. And I think 3 of these came in a pack, and they were about £8, maybe something like that. So you're looking at very reasonably priced for these. I think all the stuff from Scotia Grendel is very reasonably priced. And as I say, if what you're looking for is that kind of thing, and you're looking to build an army, something like that, if what you're looking for is maybe display quality miniatures, maybe these aren't the kind of thing that you're going for. But I think these make great minis for your actual tabletop armies. It's a bit shiny, but you can see they all have little shields as well, which attach on there. I did have loads and loads of painted Scotia Grendel miniatures, because I used to have a tier on my Patreon which was for Scotia Grendel stuff. I didn't stop because I stopped liking Scotia Grendel or anything. It was mostly a case of just postage these days is crazy, and the amount that I would have to charge. I was charging much more for postage than I was for the actual miniatures and the painting of them. So yeah, that was somewhat unhelpful. But I still paint them on commission, things like that. I do commissions of these things still. But let's crack on with a little bit of painting. I think I'm gonna make a start on this guy, and I'm gonna put in some skin tones first. Let's move this other mini that I've just been working on out the way, and I'll bring my wet palette in. And I think orc skin tones, much like human skin tones, can be any number of different colours. There's no kind of correct formula, I think, for these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a kind of darker green, then I'm going to wash over that, and then I'm going to bring up some highlights with a lighter green. So I think I'm going to start off with some War Boss green, which seems like it is probably about right for an orc. Oh, there you go. Moderator getting in there with my commissions page as well. Good stuff. I'm keeping you busy, keeping you occupied. So I'm going to start off with this darker green, and I'm going to wash it with Athenian Camo Shade. And I think on this size of miniature, I'm going to give it a little dry brush with this Nurgling green. slightly counterintuitively, on a mini this size, I'm going to use a dry brush. On a larger mini, I'd probably actually kind of paint it in layers, which is going to take much longer. You might think that for a smaller mini, I'd be doing that, but honestly, with like a face this size at tabletop level, you're really not going to notice that much difference from doing it that way. Whereas on a large mini, you really would. So yeah, we're gonna do that. I brought a couple of other greens through. These are all actually Games Workshop, but you can obviously use whatever brand you would like. You could use this one's a slightly kind of brighter green, and I brought this one through because I think you could actually use this for the real highlights on an orc skin. You wouldn't want to use much, clearly, but if you're looking for that really high kind of contrast game, which I know a lot of people really like that in their painting, then you absolutely could use something that bright. But I'm going to stick with what I've got here, and we're going to get some of this Warboss green going. Get some on the palette. Yeah, sorry, to answer the question that came much earlier, my League of Legends game yesterday, I put the noob in Noob Learns League of Legends, so you know it's there's a good reason why it's called that, and as I proved yesterday, it's all about learning and the experience. So yeah, let's get some of this Warboss green, and as ever for this stuff, I'm just going to add a tiny bit of water to it. I don't want much, particularly for a base layer. I don't want to water it down a lot, but it is nice to get it kind of running a little bit more smoothly. And we'll get in and we'll do it all over. He's obviously he's baring his teeth at this point, so those obviously will need to be a kind of bone colour or brown or something. But I'm going to add that in later, if for no other reason than when I'm dry brushing in a minute, it's all a little bit well, random, the dry brushing. So if I actually put the teeth in before I did that, I would end up with green teeth anyway. So that, like things like the teeth and eyes, I'm going to add in a little bit later. But we'll just kind of get this down as the base layer of the face, making sure that I get into all the little crevices. Because if I miss a bit here and then have to go in later and try and kind of fill in the gaps, that's just horrible. You're much better off, really, particularly because everything around the face is going to be metal. So I'm just going to put a layer of, well, it will start off with lead belcher, but any kind of silver over it. It doesn't really matter too much if you get a little bit of green outside where you're going to go. It matters much more if you've done the outside, and then you'd have to go over it. But it's not a problem if you go over, and going over is better than missing parts out. I always miss parts of minis on my first pass. I don't know why. You'd think that by now I'd have been able to figure it out and catch it, but I think it's just one of those things that your brain, especially when a mini is all kind of white in front of you, it's difficult sometimes for your brain to process exactly what the different parts are, whether it's skin, whether it's metal, whether it's leather, all those things. So it can take a couple of layers to figure out exactly what everything's meant to be. But nonetheless, we shall press on, and if we have to go back, we have to go back. It's just one of those things. That's how life is. It's not like, once I've used this paint, I can't touch it again. Well, that would be an interesting challenge. You can only use each paint once. Fortunately, they don't yet have yet have that in the Reaper Challenge League if you can't use a paint more than once. Yeah, I definitely think there's something about the human brain and not necessarily picking up on all those different parts. Chat is saying about having similar issues, which is good. But not good. I'm not wishing that on you, but you know what I mean. It's not just my brain being annoying. I definitely think there is something about that. If you've got a relatively kind of blank canvas in front of you, you don't see it in the way that you would. Like when all of his skin is green, you'll be able to pick it out very easily. But when it's white, it's more of an issue. So again, on the hands, I'm just going over the nail area. I'm not worried about leaving them blank or anything like that, because I can happily paint them over the skin. That's not a problem. Yeah, if for no other reason than actually, I very nearly just swore at the camera then, that would have been rude. But if you look at a nail, it is a little bit kind of see-through, so having a little bit of green showing through is not an issue when the time comes. And if you want to, you can just put an extra layer or two on to make sure that it is properly opaque and that you're getting that looking good. It's up to you. I mean, obviously, part of being a mini painter is you're likely to be painting many things which kind of don't exist in the real world. So who's to tell you what's right or wrong when painting an orc? I guess if you're painting kind of Lord of the Rings miniatures and trying to make them look like, well, even the films are just an interpretation, aren't they? But yeah, no, just enjoy it, have fun. That's my motto with all these things, really. Yeah, I think I'm going to go over here again because I'm in danger of doing it. I think hands are one of those ones where you do want to make absolutely sure you're getting into all those little crevices, because again, kind of painting over them at the end can be a bit of a challenging time. I still always have to do it, obviously. But so I think the only real skin showing on this guy is his hands and his face. So we'll crack on and do the other hand and get that in, and then we'll have to leave this to dry for a little bit. I might put in some metal while I'm doing that, but I don't want to do too much because, again, with dry brushing to come, the danger is you just mess it all up and have to go again. So it's good to think about how you're going to paint the different areas before you just kind of get cracking. And my general advice with these things is to kind of paint the deepest areas on the miniature first. So because the skin, there's nothing further back than the skin, you paint the skin first so that you're kind of working outwards. It's not always the case. You'll have seen me in on some of my other streams. If I've got, capes that I'm going to do heavy dry brushing on, something like that, they might well go in first. But either way, it's always a good idea to just think about the order that you're putting the layers down in. Might need a bit more paint, actually. Didn't take enough out of the pot. As I mentioned a little earlier on, he's going to have a shield, so you can... No, you can't because it's not focused. But he's got a little kind of wrap around his hand, which is where the shield will attach to. And the reason that I haven't attached it yet is precisely because it's going to be a nightmare to get in behind the shield if I've stuck it on, so I can get in. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm going to regret telling you I used to be called Mish, aren't I? Well, Bellalurian, who's in chat and is my moderator, is one of the few people who actually still calls me Mish, because he's known me, well, I mean, I'm 36 and he's probably known me 34 years or something. So, yeah, it's fine. As I mentioned many a time, I'm happy to be called whatever, as long as it's not meant in a rude way. And I'm sure you'd never be rude to me, Andy. Cool. So we'll just make sure that we've got all of this area. So I'm painting an orc from Scotia Grendel at the moment. He's very heavily armoured, so there's not an awful lot of his skin showing through, but we're just making sure where there is, we're getting this coat down nicely. And I think that'll probably do me. It's amazing how different it looks sometimes on the camera compared to how I'm kind of seeing it with my eye, and sometimes that's actually quite helpful because I can pick up on things that my eye isn't for some unknown reason. But yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to go over this hand one more time to make sure I've got all the little nooks and crannies, and I don't have to go back in or end up with just random white bits. Cool. Okie dokie. Well, that's that sorted out. So I'll show you some more of the unpainted minis quickly, because that's quite good for the actual miniatures, and then I'll move back on to some of the terrain a bit later on, which, as mentioned, I have loads of. It's a bad combination of being good quality and cheap. It means that I just end up hoarding it. There we are. So this is my subtle box of goodies, but yeah, we'll have a look at. So we've seen the barbarians and we've seen the orcs in various stages. So I'm going to show you. I've got some pirates here. So you can see here they've come in bags. Okay. So if it's not too. So look, this bag here, which contains multiple miniatures, was £5 from Scotia Grendel. So there you go, 3 minis with bases and shields for £5. Can't argue with that, can you really? So as I say, these are kind of pirate themed. He's got a beard, which is why his face looks a little bit pointy. Yeah, unpainted. You can't really see the beard, but it's because he's kind of got a beard on his chin. But yeah, so he's so he's got a little nubbin on his hand there, which is where his shield goes. Yeah, so they do lots and lots, and they are great, as I say, for filling out armies. If you're running like a D&D campaign and everyone's about to head off to sea, and you think, oh, I should maybe pick up some pirates, then these are great. I think a lot of the minis on the site actually kind of follow along with some more of the traditional Warhammer Games Workshop armies. Andy and I at the weekend were talking about some of the old Wood Elf Archers. That's what you call them, and they have in here obviously legally distinct, but they're not identical by any means, but they have that feel about them of wood elves. Which is really good, and you can actually, I bought a kind of a bundle of these, and they become even cheaper when you do that. So yeah, it's very good value, I think, to probably, as I say, not necessarily for display pieces. If you're looking for something to really spend days and days on and put in your display cabinet, it may well not be here, but I think that's not really what they're going for. So it's like saying, if you want to fill out your army with hundreds of troops, you're not going to go to, one of these places that does charge you £30 for a miniature. Which again, is not a criticism of them, because they're aiming at different markets. So, I think the Scotia Grendel know well what they're looking at, what their kind of market is, I guess. So I'm going to have a look at some more of the painted terrain now. So I'm going to look first at some doors. So these are great little dungeon doors. These 4 all come in one pack, and I think this pack is £7. As I say, no sponsorship, anything like that. So I am just kind of pointing out facts rather than anything else. But yeah, if you're building a dungeon, I actually painted up some Reaper dungeon tiles recently, and I put up a video on YouTube of that, so do check that out if you're interested. But these would go well with that kind of thing. They're obviously in the same scale. You could use them in a dungeon you're building, and again, they're not going to break the bank. If you're looking to build a dungeon for your group or whatever, it's a good alternative to some of the more expensive brands out there. And again, I'm not criticizing them at all. Companies like Dwarf and Forge, which I can't afford, so you can do this as a good alternative. I like this as a hidden door at the back of a shop or something. Nobody knows it's there, but then, haha! Yeah. So that pack of 4 doors is £7, I think. So yeah, you can build yourself a nice dungeon in that way. Let's put them back there. Obviously, the most sensible place to put these directly behind the camera that I'm using. Okay, so let's get this guy out again. Back to our orc, and I'm going to put the shade on, because that's going to take a little while to dry, and then we'll go through some more of the miniatures, and then hopefully we'll be able to kind of finish the skin at least of this off. I know it's a very small amount of this miniature which will have been painted, but hopefully it will be a helpful way to think about doing orc skin, things like that. So we'll get out I have unfortunately taken to just bringing new paints through to this desk when I need them, rather than taking back the old ones. So I have 101 paints on the desk, but I found it. Athenian camo shade. There we are. Let's get that going. So my plan is that these streams, these small creator streams, are going to change very slightly from probably from next week, I would think, as early as next week. So I'm actually going to, rather than doing one focusing on a manufacturer and then moving on to a different one, I'm going to do a small kind of series where I get a chance to actually paint up the minis, or at least one mini from a company. So obviously, as I say, we're not going to get through very much of this mini today because I only have an hour and I'm doing all the other things and stuff. But the plan is, like, from next week, I will maybe spend 3 or 4 weeks on one creator, and then I can really kind of get to grips with something from their range rather than just showing you little bits and pieces. I know I managed to do a whole wall from Fenris Games last week, but that was a bit of an exception, and yeah, I actually originally planned to do about 7 of them in the stream, so I was being a little bit over optimistic. But you can see here with this wash going on that compared to that hand, so it goes out of focus as soon as I try and show it, but you can just see it's putting in the deep highlights, the deep shadows there, which is really what we're aiming for. We don't want to change the top colour particularly because we like that. Obviously we've chosen the colour, and it does change it a little bit. It kind of blends it in, but what we're looking for with the wash, particularly on a mini of this size, is just to put in those shadows, which, you know, the mini is too small really to be putting those in by hand. And especially if, you know, if as I say, you've bought these minis to fill out your army, so you've got, I don't know, let's say you've got 20 of these that you want to paint, you don't want to be necessarily spending that amount of time on each one, so it's good to let the wash do its job for you, and you can reap the rewards of a nice well shadowed miniature. So yeah, you can see there that the face is already starting to take shape a bit more than it was, and we'll obviously do a bit more on that, bringing up some of the light bits. Yeah, I think I quite like the idea of doing kind of start to finish on these streams of a new mini. So my plan originally was to do Atlantis miniatures this week, because I was due to receive the Kickstarter. I did receive it before the stream, but like an hour before the stream, so I didn't have time to prep anything. Which is, it's not their fault. It was just, you know, part of the postal process. That's not a criticism of Atlantis miniatures. So what I'm going to do next week is start with a kind of unboxing of the latest Kickstarter, which is Elves, and then probably go from there, do some of the cleanup. The difficulty, because I guess I'm still in the relatively early stages of streaming and I'm still learning, so I'm really happy to take suggestions and comments wherever they come from. But I try and do things which I can then move on to the next stage on the stream as well. So I think the challenge with doing the cleanup on minis is then if I want to go away and prime them. Obviously, I don't want to bring my spray can to my computer. But what I think I'll probably do is kind of clean up a couple of minis, and then bring in a couple that I've already done the cleanup and the spraying for. The challenge of cleaning up resin minis is you're meant to wear a mask when you do it, which I know everybody now is just used to wearing a mask, so we don't have to worry too much about that. But I don't know how easy that will be to do on stream, so I'll have to have a think about that. But yes, the idea then is to kind of go start to finish, rather than, oh look, this is how you paint orc skin, which has very little to do with Scotia Grendel really. It just happens that I'm doing it on one of their minis. I can go start to finish, and kind of work through that. So yep, there we are. There's some shadows put in, and as I say, you can kind of start to see the effect of that. What will come next is a dry brush of a lighter green. As I say, my plan is to use Nurgling green, which I now can't find. There it is. So that's not a bright green by any means, but it's it will kind of lighten it up and highlight some of those areas. So it will look a bit more muted than some of the really extreme orc tones. But that's kind of what I'm going for in here. And as I say, if what you are looking for is, this is a well-used piece of kitchen roll, you can tell. If what you are looking for is that really bright look, you can always go for something like this, and kind of work that in, and you'll be able to see again. So this is the Games Workshop book I did. Again, it's not quite the same finish as this, because I like to have those slightly different skin finishes on the different miniatures. As I tend to work on the assumption that any humanoid, in the same way that humans do, any humanoid is likely to have different skin tones and different kind of looks. So I never, with any skin tone in the human range or any other, I never have an exact recipe that I follow. I tend to think about kind of, I guess, how the mini looks, how I want it to represent the life of the mini. In some of my previous streams, I've talked about doing human skin, which kind of has that look of being out in the sun, or living a manual life. The like ogre dude who wouldn't do his jacket up. I'm not sure that he would actually do up now. He's got a bit of a belly on him. So kind of thinking about the life of the mini and how that impacts on how you want to paint him, really. And similarly, so that guy obviously is really dirty, but then when I painted something like this, you kind of make it shining and gleaming because it's armor and it looks all kind of new. So I try to kind of think about how the, I guess, backstory of the mini really impacts on what we're doing. So we'll close up my palette for a minute because that's going to take a while to dry. The shades always take the longest to dry, but and you don't want to start dry brushing until it is dry, because if it starts to mix and you just kind of end up with a muddy mess. But also, if you use a wet dry brush, it defeats the object of dry brushing and you just end up painting it all over. So yeah, it's you definitely want to let that dry properly. So I'll show you another couple of bits of stuff from Scotia Grendel that I've painted while we wait for that to dry. So this is part of a larger set. I think it's a magician's accessories. There we go. So this is one of 3 pieces that come in that set. I haven't painted the other 2 yet, which is why I'm only showing you this one. So this is 1/3 of a set, and the whole set costs £8. Yes, I've got it on my other screen there, £8. So this I painted the ball on top with a colour shifting paint, so that it does actually look different each angle that you look at it from. And again, that's kind of it makes me think of I don't know why Lord of the Rings is getting a lot of shout outs in this session, but it makes me kind of think of the Palantir that Saruman has. So yeah, it kind of has that impression, and I wanted that to really give off almost a look of power. I think it looks a little bit kind of sinister, which again is kind of what I was going for. So I'm pleased with how that turned out. And the other piece that I'm going to quickly show you is another piece from a larger set. And again, let's have a look. I've got it here. Oh yeah, conveniently right next door to the other one. So this is again part of a set. This is from the Apothecary's Shop set. And this is half of the set. And again, the set is £8, so it would be slightly reductive to say that this is £4, but it's half of £8. And it's got all of these different like sugars and spices and even some gems on the end here. Another gem around here, and I think the texturing on these pieces is really good. It lends itself to painting easily. I think I really like the effect that I got on the wood here, but a lot of that is down to the fact that it is sculpted well. And for a set which costs £8, I think you can't really go wrong with that. At some point, I might do a bit of a stream where I paint some gems, because I like painting gems and getting that kind of I guess not quite a refractive look, but with those kind of white lines, trying to kind of really pick out some of those interesting parts of the gem. So yeah, that's about it for the pieces from Scotia Grendel that I have painted, that I have not sent to patrons. There's quite a few of them, but I'll show you a couple of unpainted ones really quickly. Let's have a look from my box of goodies down here. So they have all sorts of different things. I do have hundreds. I could spend an hour just showing you some of these unpainted things, to be honest. I probably won't, but I could. So here we have a gate, a kind of entranceway, which is I think it's carved into stone. It's got a really interesting stone texture, quite different from a lot of the stone you find, and it's got a little bit of brickwork and those two kind of skulls set back in there. So I think that's probably intended to be ruins, a ruined archway, but you could definitely have a big bad making his home behind this archway, couldn't you? Yeah, and again, there's such a lot of really strong texture on these pieces that you can really develop some of that detail without having to worry about doing it yourself. Yeah, it could easily be like a dig site. You're uncovering this, whose tomb lies inside. So I think yes. So here we have the other two pieces of the wizard's. What did I say? It was magician's accessories. There we go. So let's get these two. So these, that's a I guess a pentagram summoning circle, perhaps something along those lines. Maybe a rune of teleportation. I don't know. But that's yeah, that's a cool. Again, some of the texture on there. It will need a bit of cleanup, as a lot of these do. They do need a bit of cleanup before they're perfect. But as I say, you'd be looking at £8 for that, and that. Obviously unpainted, but which I think is a bit of a steal. But I can't decide. I think this is meant to be like a mirror, but these make me think of like coils. I don't know, like electromagnets or something. I don't know why a wizard would be using them. But yeah, and it's got chests and books and skulls and all the kind of things you'd expect. So yeah, those three. That's one set for £8. That's another entranceway. So let's see if I can find something else quickly. Okay. That's, yeah, let's go for that. So, this is... I'm not sure. I think this is probably another £8 one, but I'm not absolutely sure because I can't immediately see it on the... yeah, they're just watching Netflix or something on their mirror. So... This is another set that all comes in one go, and it's a, I think it's a tavern. Definitely, that's a kind of seating area. You can see there with throws, and it's got kind of curtaining around the outside. And you can build then, if you want to, you can build these along. They don't fit perfectly together at the moment because I haven't cleaned them up, but they would do if you did that. And so you can kind of build scenes like this. And I think I haven't come across anywhere really as good as Scotia Grendel for being able to kind of build up different scenes for your D&D games, for your D&D campaigns, or other TTRPGs, whatever it might be, Pathfinder, all of the different options that there are available to you. You can make a very reasonably priced dungeon with that, and of course, if you want to get a very reasonably priced dungeon painted at a very reasonable price by me, you can certainly do that. I am always happy to paint things up for people's games and things like that. So, yes, if you would like to commission me, you certainly can. Let's get some of these away so that I'm not just using all my space for these things. There we go. Commissions thing coming out again. Good work once again. Yeah, and I think there's a really good selection on the website as well. So if you want to have a look through all of those, you can build lots of different situations. As I say, obviously there's a tavern there, there's the apothecary shop, there's other shops, dungeon pieces, all sorts. I think I've dropped a bag on the floor, have I? Yes, I have. Okay, so let's get some more stuff away quickly. Oh, very kind, Geek Curio. Yes, I have painted a commission for Andy. A nice Minotaur ripping a man in half. Subtle. Yeah. So let's get some of these out of the way as well. Also, I suppose I should say, pretty much everything that you see on these streams is for sale if you want it. Yeah, no home is complete without a Minotaur ripping a human in half. I think I've said before, but I got one of the huge Mucklegeet dragons. Someone was very kind and bought it for me as a gift, and he's in the process of eating a paladin. He's just like shoving him in his mouth, which is amazing. At some point, I'm going to show Makugit, who's from Heresy, who I did a stream on before. At some point, I'm going to show a comparison of him and some of the other giants from other manufacturers, because I think the Reaper giants come up to about his knees. He truly is an absolute monster. But yeah, all good fun. So I'm going to do a bit of dry brushing now. So let's get my Nurgling Green, which is what I'm going to be using, and try and find a unsullied bit of my paper here to use. I'm going to use a relatively small dry brush because I don't want to go everywhere with it, and I'm going to kind of be a bit gentle. I don't want to get too much on there either. I just want to use it to kind of highlight some of those differences. I'm not going to put this on my palette or add water because I'm then going to use it for dry brushing. So I'll just put a bit on my brush, and then I'll wipe most of that off on my little bit of kitchen towel, and then I'm going to move that out of the way, otherwise I'm bound to knock the paint over. And then we just kind of slowly and gently use that to bring up the raised areas. And it's not, oh actually yeah, it does, you can see there's quite a big difference there as I turn it around. So yeah, it's really just showing you that distinction. I like to have a really strong contrast on hands, because there is a big kind of, especially if it's gripping something, which it is there, the fingers, well, like my fingers would go white, so I reckon an orc's fingers would probably go very light green. Seems like a sensible deduction. As I say, this little kind of band here is for him to hold his shield on eventually, so we don't need to do that, but it doesn't matter if I get a bit of green on there. Let's get some more dry brushing. Get that down there. And again, just kind of gently on the face. I don't want it to get absolutely everywhere, but on his kind of he has some fairly prominent cheekbones, and he's got quite a jutting out chin. So there you go. You can see there that it's kind of picked out those high points, but we've left the kind of deeper areas in that darker green. I think it's a bit easier to see from this side probably. Yeah, so you can see a bit of a difference in colour there. Or how close dare I get before it will go completely out of focus? There you go. So you've kind of got that distinction in colour. And as I say, all the details on the face will be put in at a later point. So I'll put in the teeth, I'll put in the eyes, that kind of thing. But in the meantime, we just kind of want to get this to a point where we're happy with it. So this, by the way, is just an old brush, which is just a bit knackered, and you can see it. I wouldn't want to try and do any detail work with it because it's very frayed and horrible, but it works perfectly as a small dry brush. I tend to use this for the smaller work, and I have an old makeup brush that I use for the big dry brushing work. Cool. So let's get a tiny bit more on here, and yeah, I think that at this point I'm quite happy with where that skin is. It has lightened it up quite nicely, and yeah, it has that pop to it which we weren't getting before because we hadn't put in all the highlights and lowlights. But that's a really quick way when you're doing something like this, where you're looking at it for tabletop standard. Even that is going to be closer to it than you would be at tabletop standard, and you can kind of see those differences that pop. I wouldn't necessarily use this technique on a huge orc or one that you're trying to do to a really, really high standard, but when you are looking for tabletop standards, this kind of approach works really, really well for that kind of skin look. So that I'm pretty happy with that. What I tend to do, especially when I'm doing skin first, is I'll paint the skin in, and then I'll leave it while I'm doing the rest of the mini, and then I'll kind of come back to it and see how I feel it looks once I've done the rest of it. So if I feel like once the rest of the mini's done, it actually needs a little bit more brightness or something like that, I can add that in at the end, just little touches. So it might be that I just kind of give a tiny little touch of brightness to his chin or his nose or whatever it might be, just to kind of give it that final touch. But that gives me a really good baseline for working on for the rest of the mini. Now, this guy actually, he's wearing a lot of metal, which I guess kind of makes it easy for painting in one sense. But it does mean that we have to kind of think a bit more about different colours of metal, because if I did all of this guy now in silver, like silver plate mail or something, he's just going to look really boring. It's that simple. I think what I'm actually going to try and do is there's some texture in here, which I think we can make into some fur. And he also has this kind of I'm really bad at describing pieces of clothing. This is a recurring theme from my streams. Let's say I called it a poncho last time, but basically his tiny cape. So that's going to be a different colour as well. So I think probably his chainmail underneath I'm going to do in quite a kind of mantle. Yes, there we go. So if we do the base chainmail in quite a dark silver, then that means all of the other things kind of over the top of it really kind of pop out again and give that. And the challenge is then to give it. Yeah, he stole it from his goblin friend. Is to kind of make them pop, but without just being all over the place and having 101 different things drawing the eye away in different directions. So that's going to be the challenge. And I think what I will do then is probably give him his bracers will be really kind of bright and shiny, because they are kind of, I'm not sure if they're meant to be jeweled or riveted, but either way they look quite new and shiny to me. So we're going to give that a bit more of a kind of shiny approach. So we're going to do that. As noted, we're not going to be able to do loads in this stream because we've only got another 10 minutes or so. But I'll keep cracking on and keep chatting away and things. And hopefully you'll see that it's kind of continuing to come to life just a little bit. And we'll go from there. And as I say, the plan over the next few weeks is to move towards, I guess, a short series on each of the small manufacturers. So doing, as I say, probably maybe 3 or 4 weeks on Atlantis Miniatures, so that I can really get to grips with one or more of their miniatures before I move on to something else. I hope that this has at least given you enough of an idea of the kind of look of the Scotia Grendel orcs and their miniatures in general. I realised just before the stream that I had painted so much of their scenery, and but I think the barbarian that I showed you is like the only humanoid miniature that I have left after sending them out to patrons and things. So not too many of the painted examples to show you, but we'll keep cracking on and see how it turns out. But as ever, if you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to suggest, anything that you would find really helpful in terms of how I do the streams, then just let me know. In the meantime, I will say, because I don't think I've done so yet, if you want to pick up anything by Scotia Grendel, you can go to their website, which is scotiagrendel.com. So the easiest thing is probably just look at the name of this stream where I've spelt it out, but SCOTIA space. Well, no, in the website there's no space, but in terms of their actual name there is GRENDEL.com. They are a Scottish-based company. They are slightly more than just up the road from me, but they're just up the road from where I used to work. There we go. Two examples of the website in chat. That's good. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put the link down below. And I don't know if, as I mentioned at the beginning, I know a lot of my views on these videos come afterwards, and I don't know if you see chat in those instances, so I will just say it again just in case you can't. So it's scotiagrendel.com, SCOTIAGRENDEL.com, and you can see all the stuff there with how the world is at the moment and Brexit and everything, I don't know how shipping and things like that are, but particularly if you live in the UK, I would definitely have a look at it. If what you're looking to do is build some dungeons for your players, or build up a bit more of an army or something, do check it out, because it's great value, I think, for what you're getting. So yeah, this guy probably cost me about £2, I would think, because he was part of a pack. So yeah, I think you can't argue with that too much. But yeah, I think he will hopefully look really cool once I've finished with him. I will, as ever, I post pictures of everything I paint over on Twitter, twitter.com/goblin_squire, or just @goblin_squire, if that's how you use these things. Yeah, so pictures of everything that I paint goes over there, so do check that out. And yeah, give me a follow over there, give me a follow here. Check out my YouTube channel, where all of my old streams go to. So if you're just catching up now, because Twitch gets rid of streams after a little while, you can head over to YouTube and catch some of my older streams. And if you are feeling like supporting me on Patreon, you can always do that as well, and that would be very much appreciated. You get lots of exclusive content. You at the moment, my patrons are voting on which kind of larger scale project they would like me to paint up next, and they'll be getting exclusive updates on that and all sorts. So up in the running for that, we have the Tower by Fenris Games, which I showed in the so last week's version of this stream was Fenris Games, and I showed that tower in some detail there. So do check that out if you're interested. Yeah, that tower is in there. It's also a gnomish submarine is part of that poll. That one I showed on my Saturday stream when I was chatting with Andy. And the third option I haven't shown on any of my streams yet. It's a I'm trying to think of the actual name of it. I think it's Mossbeard Tree Man, but it's a giant tree man. So you can vote for any of them if you are a patron, and you can become a patron for as little as $2 a month. And yeah, as I say, you'll get updates on all those paintings. I keep things to thank patrons for their support. I keep things on there for patrons exclusively. So if you want all of my content, you would have to subscribe. But I keep as much as I can kind of free on here as well. So don't feel like you have to if that's not something you can do. Yeah, I think that's all my plugging in. Thank you guys for putting all those links in there. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the race to get it in there. Ah, dear. Yeah, posting links to avoid working. I like it. How's it going, Katerina? Are you working on commissions at the moment? There we go. I'm gonna paint lead belcher on all of the metal areas to begin with, and then go over it with different layers. So that will kind of bring up highlights and change the different colours and things like that. Oh, that's good. We've got a couple more votes from patrons who are watching going in right now, so that's good. Having their say. I haven't decided exactly when that poll closes yet. I meant to put a poll closing date on there and forgot, and then it wouldn't let me put one in later. So I will wait and make sure that most patrons at least get a chance to vote. Some patrons tend not to get too involved in those kind of polls, so I'm not going to wait for everybody, but we'll probably give it another week or so because I've got plenty to be getting on with in the meantime. But yeah, it's good to get a couple more votes in, which is good. Yeah. So, was that another euphemism, or I mean, it's such a long stretch that I'm not sure whether that's where you were going with that. Yeah. So the plan with whatever wins the poll is going to be it'll probably take me a month or so to get through that, and every week ish will be updates for my patrons. Oh dear. So let's keep going and putting some more of this in, and yeah, it's starting to take shape on all the rest of it now. And yeah, I'll I've still got to paint my mini of today, which is not this mini. I've got another one I'm doing for today. So I will try and get this one done off stream probably tomorrow. Although I'm trying to record a couple of videos tomorrow, but I will try and get that done then and post the results up on Twitter. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to be lucky because I'll include photos of the finished mini at the end of the video. So an extra little bonus for watching it on YouTube. Yeah. There we are. Okay, so yeah, this, as I say, this is just kind of providing me a base from which I can build all the other colours on top of it, all the other kind of metallic colours. We'll go from there. So this is, I suppose, I was going to say it depends when your week, you kind of think of the week ending or beginning, but I was going to say this is my last stream of the week, but I'm streaming on Saturday, so last stream of the working week, and then stream on Saturday morning. So Saturday morning's stream is my coffee chat and minis stream. If you haven't checked out my chat with Andy last week, do check that out because that was really really fun. I really enjoyed that. This week I'm going to be looking at some of my really old Warhammer miniatures and kind of comparing them to some of the more modern ones, but also just checking out. I rescued a huge box of minis from my parents' house, which was in danger of being chucked out from when I back. These are the minis that I owned when I was a kid. And so it's really interesting to see them and how all of those things have changed. You'll also see my my painting as it was back when I was a child. So I might have to put, trigger warnings on that because it's just horrifying. But yes, you'll get to see some old minis. You'll get to see some painting, and as ever, I'll be drinking coffee and chatting and seeing who's around and shooting the breeze. I'm going to be contacting some people soon about getting them on for future chats on that coffee chat and minis. It's must make a nice change not to just have to listen to me waffling on for the full hour. But yeah, that's always a bit different and fun, and I can just kind of do whatever. It's less planned. I know it's hard to believe that this stream is planned at the best of times. But I just kind of do what I want, chat, take comments and questions from the Twitch chat and all that stuff. So do join me then if you can. With this you can see this is kind of starting to come together a little bit. You can see the silver in all these different places. I will put some fur in, and I think probably leather for his boots will be a good look. I always think it's a bit weird having metal boots. I know, like, if you were wearing full plate, people would have worn metal boots, but I always think it's a bit weird. And I think this is, I don't know, it's weird. It's like half sculpted as leather, and then maybe he's got like steel toe cap boots or something on. So I might have to have a look at that and see what the best way to do that is. But we'll press on with this off stream and then share that with you at a later point. And it's interesting to see all these differences with some of these ones compared to the really differently proportioned minis that you're getting from a lot of places. And I think that's going to be one of the things which comes out. Now that you said about the different proportions, I'm running with it. But I think that will be one of the things that comes out on Saturday, really, is how different old and new minis are from that point of view. So I think that will be interesting. There's a lot of metal on this guy, it turns out. Still going. Yeah, I guess I should say, I mentioned earlier that I water down my paint pretty much all the time. I tend not to water down metallic paints, which is what I'm using now, because it can go a bit weird with the flakes of metal in there. You can water them down. I know people do. It's easy to lose control, I think, of the paint, which is obviously not what we want to do. So if you are going to water it down, just be careful. Make sure that you're doing it little bit by little bit so you get it where you want to and you're not kind of losing that metallic effect. That's another interesting comment, that older fantasy orcs tend to wear a lot of armor, whereas newer fantasy orcs tend not to. I think that's I think I'm right in saying that Games Workshop modern ones at least do some wearing armor and some not wearing armor. So the one I showed you before, He's obviously, I mean, he's going to catch his death because look how chilly it is, and he's not got any, not got any clothes on. Yeah, objectifying orcs. That's disgraceful. Yeah, I think there are some Games Workshop ones, modern ones, that do have armor on. It tends to be, in keeping with the kind of modern thing, it tends to be a bit kind of crazy, big armor. Uh, yeah, maybe GW trying to make them look a bit less Tolkien-y. Um, Particularly, I guess, since because when I was first playing, back when I were a lad, the Lord of the Rings films hadn't come out. When did they? Did they come out? First one come out around 2000. So actually, I was probably about 15 when the first one came out. So I might just be lying, to be honest. 2001. So there you go. I turned 17 in 2001, I think. That sounds about right. So yeah, it's. I probably had stopped playing Warhammer by then, but yeah, and I know it's interesting that I shouldn't talk so much about Games Workshop when I'm doing a small creator stream, but it's interesting that they, I think, to get round some of the issues around racism and orcs and things, they talk about their orcs being created from fungus, I think. But yes, you'll see if you. No, it's not your fault, Andy, at all. I've been doing it all through the stream. I think it's because that's my main experience with orcs, really. But the older ones look a lot more like this. They look like they're wearing human armor, whereas even the armored ones that I see now tend to look like they've kind of strapped big stones to themselves, or something along those lines. So yeah, it does look a bit different. Let's do that. So we'll put some metal on there. So I've just about covered all of the like metallic surfaces at this point with this lead belcher, and then, as I say, it's about picking out where those different colours are going to be. I'll put some little bits of gold on there. I don't want it to make it look like too much like he's wearing really pristine armour or really expensive armour, because he definitely looks like a warrior rather than a noble or whatever. But little bits of kind of shiny and gold and things like that can have a really nice effect on there. So yeah, but as you can see, this guy is wearing quite a lot of like that human style armor, which I think probably is quite a difference from some of the modern ones. So yeah, as I say, it all kind of reinforces this idea of old school style miniatures, and I definitely think that's kind of where I would place Scotia Grendel, is in that kind of old school, maybe appealing to some of those people who played some of those other games back in the day and maybe fell out of love with some of the modern miniatures. I know Michael Mordor, who's the kind of mentor of mine, he's really not a big fan of the modern kind of GW stuff, and I mean I know he's a fan of Scotia Grendel, but I'm sure this is much more up his alley in terms of the sculpting of these things. I mean, obviously he'd prefer to have a goblin, but can't have everything, can you? Okay. Well, I think we've made some progress on that, and I think now at least you can see a little bit more the actual sculpt of the miniature, where when it was just pure white, it was a little bit harder to make out. Very nearly dipped my brush in my tea. That's what I get for drinking tea. Normally I drink black coffee, and it's much easier to spot that dipping something pure black is not where you want to go. So, yes, I think you can see there a little bit better the sculpt on that. Yes, it's just a bit easier to make out some of those things, and you can see he's got lots of things around his waist. He's got things hanging from his belt. But he doesn't feel like some of the more modern miniatures, which kind of feel like every single surface has to be sculpted to within an inch of its life. It's a really good level, and I think for as I say, for the kind of price that you're paying for these, like £6 for 3 of them or something, I think you really can't beat this kind of thing. It's aimed at a very different market to some of the like £20 or £30 for single miniature stuff, but it's it does the job really well as far as I'm concerned. And I'm always a big fan of supporting very local in this sense, a Scottish company. So yeah, We like that. They're not, as far as I can tell, they're not on Twitter. I think they have a Facebook presence. So if you're a Facebook user, you can go and check them out there. I'm not really, so I'm not sure. But yeah, there we are. Okie dokie. So yes, next week will be the first week of my focus on Atlantic miniatures. Atlantis miniatures. Atlantic miniatures is just a different thing. So yeah, I'll be looking at the Kickstarter, which just arrived with me. Arrived with me an hour or so before I started the stream. So I'll be looking at some of that. I'll be looking at some of the other things, and I will pick a mini. Actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll probably put a poll out. I might put a Twitter poll out. And people can pick which miniature they'd like to see me paint over the next few weeks from Atlantis Miniatures, because I've got a few different kinds of ones, so that might be quite fun. So keep an eye out for that, and do have a vote in that if you would like to. I think I've probably got ogres, elves, and one or two dwarves, so I might put those three up, and people can vote for whichever one they would like, which will be cool. Okie dokie. Well, thank you guys for joining me. I've gone a little bit over my hour, but I hope you'll forgive me. Yes, good. There's a link to my Twitter account. Thank you very much. Yeah, as I say, all the pictures of any minis that I start painting on stream and don't finish, all the finished minis will appear over there. And that's the best way. Following me on Twitter is the best way to see all the minis that I paint. And at the moment, I'm painting at least one miniature a day, every day. So that's what I'll be getting on with after I finish the stream. I need to finish my mini for today. So that's what I'm really glad that it's helped and it's made for a good afternoon. I am thinking about, at the moment, I'm thinking about putting in a longer stream once a week, or extending the streams that I do once a week, just basically because I'll be painting all afternoon anyway, so I just kind of paint and chill and see how that works. But at the moment, apart from anything else, because unfortunately, I'm still suffering from the long COVID. After an hour of talking, you might even be able to hear it. My voice is starting to flag a little bit at this point, so I'll be off to get some lemon and honey or something to fuel me up for the rest of the day. But I'm really glad that it's been a fun and interesting stream. Do check out Scotia Grendel, scotiagrendel.com, if you're interested in their stuff. And yeah, just thank you for joining me, and I hope I will see you again soon. Saturday morning, next stream. Coffee, chat and minis at 10 a.m. GMT. Bye now.